Good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday. It's April 29th. A few things before I get into today's presentation. Some of you still owe the test from chapter 25, so please get that in. All right, and start focusing on the grades for the fourth quarter. You have a couple of assignments there. You're going to have a quiz tomorrow on the vocab from chapter 27, and I'll give you a makeup day on Friday, and you got the weekend to catch up. I'm being very lenient with getting the things in whenever you get them. All right, but some of you are turning some stuff in from months ago that is I'm going to take, but I don't know how much longer I'll do that. So please try to get things in on time, or at least in a timely fashion. If you have any issues, please let me know. You know I'm more than accommodating. Okay, so today we're going to continue with the Vietnam War. All right, we're going to talk about President Johnson escalating the war or increasing U.S. involvement. We talked yesterday about President Eisenhower and President Kennedy sending money and advisors. We talked about the United States um, trying to protect democratic South Vietnam against the communist North Vietnam and how this was going to be pretty much Korea 2.0, but it didn't. Okay, so we're going to continue on, and the controversial issue today of did President Johnson have the right to send troops to Vietnam, and what were some strategies used in fighting in Vietnam? And I'll show you some pictures. All right, so LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson, the President of the United States, all right, is going to continue the same thing that Eisenhower and Kennedy did. However, in 1963, 64, 65, he's going to start escalating. Okay, South Vietnam is incredibly unstable. I told you yesterday that their president they assassinated. All right, North Vietnam or the Viet Cong, okay, are starting to take over South Vietnam. So the United States can't have this. Remember, containment of communism, the domino theory. If one country fell to communism, everybody else would fall. So President Johnson vows in a speech that Vietnam will never become communist. Okay, and this is a very bold statement here. All right, very bold statement. Borderline war, not there yet, but we're getting there. Johnson will send in more money. He sends in more advisors. And slowly, he starts to send in, okay, the military. Now, there's no act of war yet. There's no declaration of war. There's none of that. All right. But he slowly starts to send troops there to protect South Vietnam. Well, North Vietnam finds out about that and immediately goes to their two allies, China, communist, the Soviet Union, communist. So you've got communist China, communist Soviet Union supplying North Vietnam, and you've got the United States supplying South Vietnam. Okay? Here's President Johnson, 1963 to 69. All right, here he is actually shaking hands with the troops in Vietnam. We'll talk more about these pictures later. Okay? This is the big thing, and this is definitely going to be on your test. It'll definitely be on your vocab sheet. It's what's known as the Gulf of Tonkin incident. Okay, the Gulf is a body of water, all right, and it's right outside the coast of Vietnam. In 1964, President Johnson gets reports that American ships were shot at in the Gulf of Tonkin. Okay, he gets reports. Are there concrete facts about this? No, he's getting reports. He also gets reports that that's not true. Okay? But as the President of the United States, President Johnson, and the Commander in Chief, that's his title, has a responsibility to protect the military, he orders airstrikes against North Vietnam. The next day, Congress, and this is so important, does not give him a declaration of war. They give him what's known as the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution, and I'm going to explain this. What it basically says is the president can do whatever was necessary to handle the issue in Vietnam. It's not a declaration of war. It's not World War One. It's not World War Two. It's not even Korea. It's a document by Congress giving the president the authority to, quote, handle, end quote, the issue in Vietnam. This is going to be really important when we do Section 4 because something like this will never happen again. Okay? President Johnson will immediately escalate the U.S. involvement, and by 1964, were in Vietnam, money advisors, and now the military, based on an incident in the Gulf of Tonkin that may or may not have been true. Okay? Here is the actual, this document right here is the Gulf of Tonkin resolution. This was given to the president by Congress and his president's signature. All right, approved August 10th, 1964. All right, that gave him the right to basically handle the issue. The issue was right here. All right, allegedly, American ships were being shot at. The president, protecting the military, will order airstrikes on North Vietnam, and the Vietnam War starts. Okay, that's basically it. There never was a declaration of war for Vietnam. Remember that. Okay, it was the Gulf of Tonkin resolution. All right, and these are actual photos. All right, North Vietnamese motor torpedo boats attacking the USS Maddox April 2nd. All right, we believe these are American ships being shot at. Again, you can look at the picture here. Yeah, it looks like something's shooting or being shot at. And here's an explosion in the water. Whether or not it's American troops, whether or not it's North Vietnamese, whether or not it was Soviet and China, we don't know. But President Johnson took this to go to war. Okay? Um, at the same time, in 1964, President Johnson is up for re-election. All right, now he's the vice president of President Kennedy. People still loved Kennedy. So he is going to be pretty much reelected very easily in 1964. And he gives a famous statement, all right, that he's not going to send American boys to do the job of what Asian boys ought to do for themselves. Meaning, we're not going to get involved in Vietnam long. I'm just sending American troops there to maintain peace. He wins re-election. Secretly, him and his advisors had planned on invading Vietnam. In March of 1965, okay, 3,500 Marines will be sent in. Within 6 weeks, 50,000 more. By the end of the year, 184,000. By 1968, 500,000 or 500,000 troops will be in Vietnam. These numbers are crazy. 3,500, 5,000, 184,000, 500,000. Again, without a declaration of war. Okay? This is the map to show you the election in 1964. Everything in red is what Johnson wins. Blue is Barry Goldwater, the Republican president, who spoke out against some Vietnam issues and things going on at home. He wins a couple southern states and over here. Okay. However, look at the total: 486 to 52, 43 million votes to 27 million. It's 61% of the population. Johnson's immensely popular. Remember, in 1964, containment and the domino theory and the Cold War and communism and the Soviet Union, they were the enemies. All right, and Johnson was seen to be very strong against communism. However, when he's up for re-election in 68, he won't run. But we'll get into that later. Okay? Very good map here, bar graph, that shows you the increase of troops in Vietnam, 1960 to 69. Really nothing. Start to go a little. This is more advisors, more troops, boom. There's the escalation right there. All right, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69 lowers a little bit. And by 70, 71, Nixon's bringing them home. All right, so look at this increase. All right, kind of down here, mostly advisors, boom, right to troops. All the way up to here. All right, that is a steady increase of troops in Vietnam, again, without declarations of war. Okay? Fighting in Vietnam was very hard. All right, it was a jungle. It's all jungle warfare. All right, there were tunnels built into the ground. The Vietnamese army, or the Viet Cong, the North Vietnamese army, all right, dug in, quote unquote, dug in. There were tunnels underground. There was headquarters underground. It was jungle warfare. Very hard to distinguish between friend and foe. And the mentality was basically what was called search and destroy. U.S. helicopters would drop troops off. Okay, go find the enemy in the forest, in the jungle. Crazy hard to do. Two things they did come up with on how to fight in Vietnam was the use of napalm and Agent Orange. Napalm is a jelly-like substance that goes in bombs that causes fire. All right, Fire and trees don't go well together. You would burn down the forest. Problem is, innocent people can die from this. The other one is Agent Orange. Agent Orange is a pesticide or a chemical used to kill plants. So if you're fighting in a forest, it would make sense. Drop a pesticide. The problem is, what we didn't realize is Agent Orange causes cancer and other issues, birth defects, cancer, health issues that actually Vietnam veterans today are still suffering from. Agent Orange is no longer allowed to be used. All right, it's technically considered chemical warfare. This is an example. These are actual pictures of Vietnam. Like this is a napalm bomb. Okay, right here. Look at all that fire. All right, this is napalm. This is napalm. These are actual pictures. I'm not photo shopping any of this. The photo's been cropped. Okay, these are actual fires. These planes are dropping Agent Orange. All right, chemicals that would kill these plants. Would it work? Yeah, it absolutely would work. Look at this. Look at all this debris. The forest clears. The problem is it was incredibly bad for your body. Right? They didn't realize it at the time. And there are still marches, and here are some Vietnam veterans still marching in Washington, right, trying to make sure that the veterans who are suffering from Agent Orange are taken care of. Okay? I told you about the tunnels. All right. The North Vietnamese and the Viet Cong Army did dig in underground. Here's ground level. Okay. And there were bunks, there were hospitals, ammunitions, water wells, kitchens, food built underground. So jungle warfare was hard enough. All right. Imagine doing it trying to find an enemy that's underground. Okay. Another example. All right. These are actual tunnels that were built in Vietnam that are still there. All right, some of these were preserved. All right, if you're walking along the jungle and this is covered and you fell into this, well, you saw what would happen. Okay? Again, another one. All right, this would all be covered with grass and debris. You just take a step and all of a sudden gone. All right. Sometimes there'd be poisonous snakes in there with the spikes. Very deadly. There are some tunnels that are still there. Okay. Um, the only way to really find out what was down there was to send someone down there. Notice this soldier here, younger guy. These were known as tunnel rats. You give it a flashlight, pistol, jump in and go see what's down there. Okay, you had to clear these tunnels if you were going to win the war. This was rough stuff. All right, it's an example of how small these things could be. All right, this is just an example. This is a tour guide showing some of the tunnels. This would just be put on top. You'd walk right over it, and you would never realize your enemy was actually underneath you. Incredibly deadly. Okay, here are some examples. These are actual pictures, guys. All right, of checking out some of these tunnels to see if anybody was down there. These are American soldiers in Vietnam, American veterans. Real pictures. Real pictures, guys. All right, jungle fighting. Tough, tough fighting. Search and destroy. Okay, helicopters would drop off troops. The helicopters would fly away. The American soldiers would just walk through the jungles trying to find the enemy. Tough policy. Okay, again, real photos. All right, keep in mind these photos are in color. All right, these are not made up photos. These are not propaganda photos. These are actual photos. Compare these to World War II. All right, very patriotic in World War II. Vietnam was very real. We're going to talk about the impact of television later on when we get into some of the Vietnam protests. All right, search and destroy. Real pictures, guys. Not making this up. These are real pictures from Vietnam. Helicopter drops the troops off. Get low, find the enemy in the middle of a jungle that you couldn't see. Okay? Here's one soldier in Vietnam with a bazooka. Look at him. He looks like a kid. He's probably 18, 19-year-old kid fighting in Vietnam. Real pictures. Okay, I wanted you to see some real pictures, what it looked like. All right? This is actually the last slide. So remember, today, Gulf of Tonkin resolution. Was the president correct in going to war in Vietnam? Was there ever a declaration of war? And obviously the answer to that is no. How did President Johnson escalate? Why did he send more troops? The domino theory, the Cold War, the threat of communism, protecting South Vietnam. How did we fight in Vietnam? Okay, Agent Orange, napalm bombs, search and destroy, jungle warfare, go find the enemy, tough, tough fighting. All right, they got dropped in the middle of the nowhere to find an enemy that they couldn't really see and or find. All right, and we'll get into more next week on protest of Vietnam and people who are against it and why. All right, so to review, if you haven't submitted Chapter 25 test, please do so. Get in your homework from yesterday. I'm going to post the homework shortly today on this. All right, complete that. And tomorrow you'll have a vocabulary quiz, and I'll let you catch up on Friday. Again, stay safe and healthy, guys. Watch the videos. And if you have any questions, you can text or email me. Have a good day, guys.